Hey everyone, it's Dr. DeCubellis from Main Street Chiropractic, and today I am joined with Matt Herbeck. Thank you for stopping by today. Now, Matt is a real estate attorney. Very, very important because there are some things that you really need to have an attorney involved with, especially when it comes to real estate. That's why I wanted to have you by today. So thanks for coming by.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem. So, one thing I wanted to talk with, I know I've heard some people mention some things about this, and I wanted to get an expert's opinion on this. Let's talk about walkthrough. Sometimes when you are purchasing, or even if you're the one selling, when it comes to the walkthrough, that's where things can sometimes get a little heated. So tell me a little bit about what to expect in a walkthrough and what we're really looking for.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's the walkthrough is what happens generally within about 24 hours of closing. Most of the time, it's either the night before, if it's an early morning closing, or it could be morning of. Either way, it's generally pretty close to the closing time. That walkthrough obviously is the time when the buyer has their final chance to look through, make sure everything's good to go, that essentially there's no major holes in the walls. And sellers are supposed to leave the property that they're selling in what's called broom clean condition. Well, as we found out in life, everyone's definitions of everything is slightly different, and broom clean condition to one person is not necessarily what it means to another person. So you do have those times where somebody rolls into a walkthrough and they're like, shocked that it's so dirty because they look at it and they keep everything in their house immaculate. Well, obviously that person thinks broom clean condition is a lot different than the person that's a little bit on the messier side. So it does lead to potential talks and problems where people are asking for credits or they're asking for somebody to go in there and take care of whatever the issue is. So you might have it where it is a major issue and there's a pipe burst and there's water running out, which we all understand that's something that needs to get dealt with. But we also have those times where somebody moves their couch and maybe underneath there was a little scratch on the floor, and you do have clients that are like, oh, that scratch wasn't there, and then it's the other side saying, no, it was there, and it was just the couch was covering it, and then the buyer's like, well, I want it fixed. A lot of times people start to focus on the wrong things, and they're spending a decent amount for a property. We'll just call it $300,000 for a property, and now we're all fighting or focused on a $20, $50, $100 item, which obviously is a far cry from that kind of look at it as a big picture type item. So a lot of it's trying to just manage expectations and really letting people know kind of that this is another negotiation, and we might get a little something out of it if we're on the buy side trying for something, or on the sell side, we're telling our seller, listen, do we want to potentially lose a transaction over something small like this? And unfortunately, people, they always like to say they get stuck on principle, or they're dying. Well, you'll die on principle. And a lot of times people kind of dig in their heels, and it causes bigger problems, rather than them really focusing on the fact that, hey, listen, everything else looks great, we're in good shape. If that's the smallest of problems, let's move forward and just take it for what it is. And we try, as attorneys, we're trying to manage those expectations and really let people know what's normal, and sometimes when it's a smaller item, advising them that, hey, is it really worth potentially losing a transaction over it? So.
And it's not only that, too. It's not only just losing the transaction, it's losing all the time.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's really, so that's kind of the big thing, is that the sellers get so focused on, well, I've had market time for this last month that has obviously it's not been on the market, it's been under contract, so I'm going to lose out on all that, so they're upset about that type of scenario. And that's why there's a lot of things that kind of weigh into those factors of, hey, this guy's asking for something that's $50 here, all right, fine, just give it to him. Or am I really willing to say, no, I'm going to just say I'm not doing it, and not really willing to concede anything. But as long as we can kind of get both sides willing to kind of maneuver a little bit, it generally works out okay.
And that makes perfect sense. If it's something little and you can live with it, that you're never going to notice, that's one thing. If the whole basement's flooded, that's completely different. So it makes perfect sense. So just remember that, keep that in mind. But that's why it's so important to have someone working with you, have an attorney, because they can advise you on these things. Yeah,
that among many other things in a transaction, always good to have an attorney. While a transaction could go completely smooth and there's no issues and everything is just perfect, well, obviously not necessarily needed on a transaction like that, but if I had $1 for every time that transaction went perfectly smooth, well, I'd have probably a couple dollars.
Right.
That being said, it's nice to make sure that you've got somebody there that's looking out for your interests, that's going to fight for you when or if something does go awry in a transaction, which unfortunately, especially in this day and age, has a tendency to do so.
Right. Makes sense. I hope that gets a little more clear on what we're looking for in a walkthrough and what you should be looking for. But also, if you want to get in touch with Matt, his contact information is below. So thanks for coming out.
Yeah, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
No problem.